We are with Howard Dockter here today looking at some of his photos. Can you tell us who's in this photo, Howard?
Yes, this is my grandpa and grandmother from the Dockter side, Michael and Caroline, the Dockter.
And do you know where they were born?
Gosh, I think they've, let's see, I don't know for sure. I'd have to look maybe in the book it tells you, I think, where they were born, in that big book. But
Have you ever heard any interesting stories about them?
not really. All I know that they lived with my mother and dad. When my mother and dad got married, they lived with them for till they died, I guess. But
Okay. And do you know of anything of their travels from Russia to America, or even travels in America?
no, no, right? That's pretty much blank from other than hearing about traveling with wagons to Medina and stuff like that to get material when they first homesteaded out in north of Streeter. Other than that, mostly I don't know much about them.
And who are these people?
That's John and Christina Schlenker. They're my grandparents, and they also came from Russia. And first they went to Colum, and then they moved up here, just 3 miles southwest of Gackle, on a farm. They farmed there, and they had a bunch. I don't know. They must have had about 12 children, including my mother in that group.
Did you know these grandparents very
Yeah,
well?
yes. Well, yes, I did. I stayed with them in the summertime sometime but I was pretty young at that time. But yeah, they just farmed like all the rest of them, And
What type of person was your grandfather?
he was pretty strict. Yep, he was pretty strict. She done. She was the worker. She done the milking and stuff when the rest of them were out in the field. The reason I stayed down there with them in the summertime, I'd go and get the cows for milking. They'd put them in a little fence, and she'd go in there and milk the cows. But other than that, there's much haul a little grain out there when with them, but they usually would go to town on Saturday afternoons. I remember that, and she would bring me a sack of corn candy. You'd have to remember that, right? Candy.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to
No,
say?
no, I guess not. That's August and Matilda Dockter, August M. Dockter, and my parents. They lived 7 miles north of Streeter, northwest of Streeter, on a farm. They raised they raised all kinds of chickens, ducks, turkeys, and geese, and done some grain farming and livestock.
Okay. Could you tell us a little bit about your mother?
Yeah, she was a busy person. Yeah, she done the baking and kept us going when in the dirty 30s anyway, cooking all those German dishes. or whatever they were, strudels and dumplings, and at least we didn't go hungry. Yeah. Often said we didn't have any money, but we had plenty to eat. Yeah. Yeah.
And do you know when and where she was born?
Glistich in Russia. Yeah. Yeah. My dad, I think they said he was born in what the heck was that town? I can't even remember right now offhand. But they were kind of by the Black Sea there, my dad.
Okay. Did your mother ever tell you any stories about her journey from Russia to America?
Yeah. Yeah. She was telling us about one thing that sticks in my mind is a little baby died and it must have swam behind the ship for days before it finally disappeared. And it was pretty crowded on the ship. Yeah. I think she was about 8 years old, I believe, when she came over. But I think my dad was about the same age. Maybe he was a little older, 9 years old or something.
How did your mother express her emotions, such as like fear or love or anger?
Well, she was pretty strict too. They were, I guess you'd have to be. But she would cry a lot though during World War II when the boys were in the service, and she, she was worried about them guys at that time.
Okay. Could you describe your relationship with your mother?
Oh, I think we were close all the time. Yeah, yeah.
How did your mother cope during the hard times?
Well, I suppose, of course, well, I guess when you're little like that, you really don't realize how tough it really was. And I know it was tough on them because later on I know they lost the farm and then they bought it back when things got better. Uh, yeah, it wasn't easy for them, I guess.
And when and where did she die?
When she died in 2001.
And
She,
go ahead.
she's buried in Streeter. My dad and her are buried in Lutheran Church Cemetery in Streeter.
And how did she die?
I suppose of old age, she was 105, practically 106 years old.
Okay. And who's this here?
That's when my dad and we took a trip to California that time. I think it was in 1949. My brother Harold was going to college out there in Redlands, California then he decided we're going to go out there and see him, but I don't remember what lake it was or anything.
Okay. Could you describe your father for us?
He was also pretty strict, and they always had plenty of work to do. That's for sure. That's what I remember most about them. Is of course when my brothers got drafted. Well, Then there wasn't too many people around there, And my sister got married, and the other brother went to Portland, Oregon to work in the shipyards at that time. So
Okay. How did your father express his emotions?
I would say sometimes he was pretty angry about, after losing the farm and working. And
Could you describe your relationship with your father?
well, I'd have to say it was good. One thing you knew who the boss was. In those days, I guess it was that way.
Okay. How did your father cope during the hard times?
Well, I suppose about like everybody else did, I know he got, well, at that time they had that, horses got that, I think was that disease, and then he got it from the horses, from encephalitis or whatever they call that. And he was in pretty bad shape for a long time. But he never was as strong as he ever was then afterwards.
What was his profession?
Farming. And he was the community butcher. He went around to a lot of the places around there and done the butchering in the fall of the year. He done a lot of that. And he was actually a pretty good carpenter too. He done mostly anything that needed repairing and building he did himself. So
Did he do anything else around the neighborhood?
that's one thing he really did, was a lot of butchering. And then, of course, at that time, if people built a building, then everybody went and helped, So I can't think of anything else really that he went around and did, but butchering, I know he did that.
Did he ever do any haircuts?
Oh yeah, it's another thing, I forgot all about that. Yeah, the neighborhood boys, especially in the wintertime when there was more time, And of course, then my mother would whip up a cake, and somebody had to get ice to make ice cream, and then it turned out to be like a party. Yeah.
And the neighborhood boys would come to your house to get their haircut?
Yeah. Seemed like there was lots of boys around at that time too. Yeah.
Okay. And when and where did he die?
He was only 61 years old when he died. He, he just, I don't know really what, I, he had emphysema, and then he just got weaker and weaker.
Okay. Who are we looking at here?
Well, this is Fred Fisher and Bertha, his wife, and my dad and mother. They were actually, Fred and Bertha were my sister's father and mother-in-law. But what the occasion was here, I really don't know.
Okay. How many children did your parents have?
5 boys and 2 girls.
Can you remember their names in the birth orders?
Oh yeah. Edwin, Arthur, Adam, Viola, Harold, Ruth, and Howard, myself.
The baby.
The baby, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Of your two parents, who was the more strict parent?
I think my mother was more, she done the light discipline.
What types of consequences did they have for you if you got in trouble?
Well, there's sometimes the razor strap. Yeah. It didn't really happen that often.
Who influenced your life more?
Probably my mother, being she was around so much longer than he was.
Did you ever hear how your parents met?
No, I don't. I suppose. Yeah, I think they met at a dance someplace or a wedding dance or something. I think that's what it was.
Okay. What types of things did your parents like to do during their free time?
Well, back then mostly they'd go visiting neighbors and make trips out to Salt Lake. I don't know, Lake George. We lived about 3 miles from there. It's a Salt Lake, they call it, but used to be a pretty good place to go. It was, they played, well, there was a dance hall, roller skating and everything out there, and a hotel and several buildings out there at that time. But now the water came up so high, and I don't know what years that was, and it just kind of wrecked everything.
Okay. Do you have anything else to add about your parents?
No, not right now. I suppose I'll think of something after you're gone.
Okay, who do we have here?
That's the Dockter family.
Okay, do you want to go left?
Okay. This is Adam, Harold, Edwin, and Arthur. I should probably mention that Harold and Arthur, Harold just passed away in March, and he passed away about, must be around 15 years ago already. And my dad, and me, and my mother, and Ruth, and Viola. When the war broke out, they got drafted first. They went at the same time.
Okay. Could you tell us a little bit about your brothers and sisters?
Well, I can tell you, Adam, he lives in Billings, Montana, and he was a welder out there. And Harold, he lived in California, and he had a machine shop in California. And Eddie lived in, Edwin is actually his name. He lived in Michigan and worked for Buick Motor Division. And Arthur was, most of the time he was on a farm. And Ruth, she just lives out here, about a couple of miles out of Gackle. Viola still lives in Streeter. Well, Edmund does too. Live in Streeter.
Did you ever hear any interesting stories about any of their births?
No. Some of that was, top secret stuff.
When you guys were growing up, did you get along with one another?
Pretty well, I think. Well, by the time I got, when I was pretty young yet, then they were, Eddie and Art and Adam were the CCs, civil, and that was, yeah, you don't get to know them older ones. Well, he's 11 years older than I am. So by the time I really got a little bigger, he was gone, the bigger guys.
Was there any competition in the family?
Just, I don't, probably to get to the table.
What type of mischief did you guys get into?
Would there be mischief? Not really a lot. Them were the bigger guys that have a little, when the parents would go away, they'd ride the calves and steers and stuff like that, but we'd go. Those guys used to go and, the neighbor kids just play baseball. Some of the bigger guys would play. They had a farm team. Played baseball out there, but
Are you closer to one sibling than any of the others?
oh gosh, I don't know. I don't think so. I suppose maybe. Well, Eddie moved back, so we got to go fishing together quite a bit. As far as I know, we all got along pretty good. The whole bunch.
Okay. You mentioned your brothers going to war and some of them working for the CCC. What was it like when they left home for you?
Well, at first, when the CCs, I guess I was too little to realize it didn't really make a lot of difference to me, but I know it did to the mother and dad, that's for sure. But I suppose if you need a few bucks, what they got helped out a lot for the family. Then they used to go to the Red River Valley and work down there, pick potatoes and things like that. I could remember that. I think Mother and I and Ruth probably were home on the farm. Then Dad even went down there too sometimes.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add about your family?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Okay, and what's this picture?
That's the picture of our farm. Was our farm. One thing that I didn't realize until I really looked at that picture, that trailer there doesn't have any wheels on it. And the reason why that is, my dad bought a car from the neighbors, but we didn't have any tires, so if we wanted to drive the car, we had to take the wheels off the trailer and put them on the car.
What was it like growing up on a farm?
Pretty good. It was pretty good. Other than we had to do some work there, but it was a good life, I guess. But it was a lot harder now then than it is now, I guess.
Is there any negative aspects of growing up on a farm for you?
Well, other than not going to any further than the 8th grade in school, so. Well, part of that was that my brothers were in the service already at that time, so they needed all the help they could get out in the farm. Mm,
Could you describe your house for us a little bit?
the house,
Yeah.
such as you mean,
Like how many rooms did it
oh,
have?
well, there was a kitchen, dining room, a large living room, and 3 bedrooms. It was, plus we had the kids there, plus there was, the school teacher usually stayed at our house. It was crowded, but when you're little, you don't really pay a lot of attention to that, There's no running water. We carried the water, and
You have your house on here in the barn. What are those other 2 buildings?
that's a granary, and that's a garage, and there's another granary over. That isn't on the picture here. Oh, there's a couple. Yeah, you wouldn't see them. What part? Well, this is the granary, and that's a garage, and the barn, and then there was another granary behind the barn there, and the chicken barn was back there too. I think that's about it.
And did you have indoor plumbing at this house, or did you have to go outside?
There was no indoor plumbing at all, no. You ran for the water. Yeah.
And where did you go to the bathroom?
Outhouse? By golly, that's not on the picture either. But that's over by the house there. Yeah.
And could you describe your outhouse a little bit for us?
Well, it was only a one-holer, so. Yeah. Some had, it was only about, I suppose, 5 by 5. I imagine. That's about all they were. That's my brother Adam and I. Oh, and Ruth is over here. I go in. Can't forget her.
And you say that was you?
Yes.
Did you ride horses a lot?
Every day. Yeah. But this is actually the pony. Sandy was really the pony. We'd ride him every day. Ruth and I used to herd cows, and then we'd go in the pasture. and catch old Dolly there, and we'd have 2 horses to ride. Take a binder twine. She was. We walk up there, and she'd be. You could catch her anywhere. We weren't supposed to do that, but we snuck them out once in a while.
Did you have a favorite horse?
Yeah, as long as old Sandy was around, he was a favorite. Yeah, yeah, he was. He was getting pretty old already. I don't know what was going on there, but my mother was there, and I think that's me over here, and I don't know who that other one is. Well, that's just down in the barnyard there. Got a couple of little pigs running around there, it looks like.
What all types of animals did you have running around on your farm?
Cows, horses, pigs, sheep. I think that's about it. Oh, I can't forget my goat.
And did you have your cows out to pasture, or were they in your barn?
We had them in the pasture, and a lot of times the pasture was so short that we'd take the cattle out and herd them. You know, at that time there weren't. Now everything is fenced, but at that time there was a lot of pasture or prairie land that wasn't fenced. So we'd take them out and herd them out there.
Did you have to brand these cattle then?
They never did, no. Not until later years. But we never had to brand those. Of course, I don't think anybody had really a lot of cattle at that time. Because over every hill there was a farm at one time, you know, so. Yeah, that was my goat. After that goat got bigger, and then the well was more than a block away, the well, so then I'd have a little harness for it, and I'd put a cream can on the sled and haul water up to the house for my mother to wash and stuff like that. And that's my little truck there. I got a little story to tell you about that. I was sitting on the floor and had my hand on the cab, and my brother Adam, he was sitting there in the house, and I don't know what happened, but the rifle discharged and the bullet went through the box on the little truck. So it was kind of close to my hand. Of course, it scared me so bad. I ran and hid, and they had a heck of a time to get me out from under the bed, I guess.
Was that the only goat that you had there on the farm?
Yeah, well, we used to have a billy too, but this was a nanny goat. We went to visit some people, and they gave me that goat. But that's about. Of course, she was kind of mean with the sheep, so my dad cut her horns off. That's why it didn't have the horns. Well, we're standing on top of a snowbank that one year there was so much snow in our yard that we had to cut steps in to go from the house to the barn. It was just a huge snowbank, right? And I think we just got done hauling some hay there, if I'm not mistaken.
And you know who's in that picture?
Yeah, that's me on this side and Harold, my brother. Of course, Barney and Max. I don't know, that must have been about in the early 40s when, my gosh, did we have a bunch of snow that year.
Were you kind of trapped on your farm out there then?
Yeah, a lot of times. We didn't, well, in the earlier years, it just jack up the old car and leave her set for the rest of the winter. You know, well, the roads weren't built up hardly at all there either, and so if you wanted to go to town, it was with the team. That's all. Yeah,
Would you go very many places in the winter?
just in the neighborhood. Yeah, not mostly. Probably, I doubt if it was a mile and a half anywhere at night. We used to ride. We'd promise our sister, "No, we won't ride fast tonight." Then we'd really go.
Do you have any stories about getting caught in any blizzards?
Well, we really didn't get caught, but it was close. One time during Lent, and we were in church on a Wednesday night. And I don't know what year that was, but of course we got out of church and it was raining. And my dad, he liked his horses. He didn't like it. We had to drive about almost a mile to the car where we left the car by a little bit of road, and we had him tied up down there. And well, he wanted them horses out of that rain, so we went home and got in the sled, left everybody off up by the house, and I went down, put the horses in the barn, and took the harness off and stuff. When I come out, I couldn't hardly find the house no more. It was blizzarding that bad. But that time, a lot of people got trapped out in the country and stuff. Yeah, that came up pretty fast sometimes. That the taller guy, that's Arthur, and me, of course.
Do you remember which horse that was?
Yep, that was me. Must have been hay making time because the hay rake is sitting there and the grass mower.
What types of chores did you have to do around the farmyard?
Well, one job I didn't care much for, I had to clean the chicken barn every Saturday morning in the wintertime. But there was always something to feed or feed the calves and things like that. Separate the milk and then you give the milk, save the cream and give the milk to the calves and things.
Was there any chores that you kind of like to do?
Well, yeah, I like to drive horses. Yeah. Well, I didn't mind hauling hay or anything like that. Yeah, that was me. A horse named Silver. That was, I don't know what year that was, but my brother Harold and I stayed out at the farm, and my mother and dad went to Portland. That was during the war. And my dad worked in a shipyard through the winter, and my mother worked in a wool mill at that time. And
Did you ever get to go on any family vacations with your parents?
Well, yeah. We went to South Dakota that one time when, I think there's a picture in there when we did. While they were gone, we went to town one time, and then a guy was going the wrong direction with the car, and we were going to stop him, and then he rear-ended us. But
What happened after he rear-ended you?
well, in order to fix the car, we had to get some weed out of the bin and sell it to pay for the damage on the car. Dad never did know that, but I don't know, somebody must like to take pictures. That was me and Nancy. But what that was all about, I don't know.
How old were you when you started to ride horses?
I don't know. Must have been pretty young, I don't know. Couldn't have been too old on there. Of course, I was barefooted. We never wore shoes in the summertime. Yeah, that was me and old Rex. That was a bronc. He would run through a fence if you'd let him. But you would never let him loose because you'd have a heck of a time to catch him. He did not like to get caught.
Did you like to ride with saddles or on bareback?
We rode mostly bareback, but he was so skinny all the time you had to have a saddle on him. Yeah. No, he never, hardly ever rode with a saddle. That was me and Louis Dockter. We were thrashing with my uncle, John.
Got you on the left there.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Can you describe Louis for us?
Yes. He was a happy look guy, you know. What happened to him, he had a horse that she liked to switch her tail, and then she'd get the rein under her tail, and then he'd have to climb down and get it out again so he could drive. And one time he just got up there, then she did it again, and he just kind of touched her on with the fork, and they took off. Then he couldn't steer him anymore, and they went around the circle and tipped the hay rack over, and bundles and all. I think they ran about 2 miles till they got him again.
And how did you say he was related to you?
Related? He's my cousin.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have a lot of cousins around when you were growing up?
Well, not close to the farm, but they lived south of Streeter, and we lived north of Streeter.
Do you have any favorite cousins when you were growing up?
No, I don't think so. You gotta turn a little bit there.
You can look at it.
Oh, okay. I'm sure I know them all. Oh, yeah. Well, that one is Edward Dockter and August, they're brothers. Then is me, Gideon Stelzer, and my brother Harold, and Gottlieb Doctor, my brother Adam. Of course, that's Louis, and that's Merle Weiser.
Want to do that again for us on camera?
Okay, that's Edward Doctor and August Doctor, and that's me and Gideon Stelzer, my brother Harold, and Gottlieb Doctor, and my brother Adam, and Merle Weiser, and Louis Doctor. They were all doctors except two.
And is this part of your threshing crew?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that is. Yeah, that was my uncle's rig.
Did you just help thresh at your own farm, or did you go out with the crew?
Oh, yeah, we'd go out and thrash for a long. That one year we thrashed until about a day before Thanksgiving. Of course, we had, I don't know how many snows that year that it snowed, that the shock piles were covered up and everything. That was in the early 40s.
Could you describe what a typical threshing day was like for you? Like when you got up and when you went to bed?
Well, we'd be up before 6 o'clock, maybe get up at 5, take care of the horses and feed them and everything, and then we'd have breakfast, and we'd probably, I know it'd be pitch dark before they'd quit. You know. Then you'd have your supper, and then you'd go up in the hayloft and go to sleep. Didn't get a shower every night, that's for sure. But everybody smelled the same, so it didn't make much difference.
How many times did you get to eat during the day?
Well, we'd have breakfast, and about 9 or so they'd come with lunch. Then we'd have our noon meal and a lunch after, maybe around 3, 4 o'clock. And then we'd have supper. I know it was, well, it depended on the time of the year it was, but I know it was dark all the time. Yeah.
What types of food would they have prepared for you?
Oh, usually they served pretty good meals because they'd have beef or pork or chicken for meat and potatoes, and I don't know if we ever had much of any salad, I don't think, but bread, pie, man, we had pie.
What were some of your favorite types of pie?
Well, for a long time I thought apple was the best. I'm changing my mind now, though. I like blueberry now and some of them others.
Was there any job that you particularly liked on the crew rather than any other job?
Well, there's only one. Each guy had his own team and a rack for hauling bundles. That's all you did. You just had probably one or two guys taking care of the thrash machine and the tractor, you know. That's about it. Of course, and then the grain haulers, but
All right, and who are we looking at here?
uh, that's me on the left, and my dad and Jerry Dockter, his grandson. Looks like we were getting ready to go cut some hay.
How many acres did you usually hay?
Well, I suppose, of course, that was all mostly prairie grass. I suppose it got close to 200 acres, maybe. Yeah. I was driving the tractor, and my dad was operating the binder. We were binding oats, I think, at that time.
And what was bindering?
It was making into a bundle. Then you'd have to shock it and eventually haul it to the thrash machine and thrash it, you know.
When did you get your first tractor?
Well, this one here, we had one. I can't remember what year that was when my dad bought an old 1530 McCormick Deering on steel yet. It must have been, but this one here was 1948 H International. But then McCormick, that was maybe in 43 or 44 when he bought the other one.
How did having a tractor change your life?
It was much better fooling with the horses, boy. Especially binding it was such a hard job for the horses. When we used to bind her with horses, we'd probably only bind her maybe 3 or 4 hours with one team. Then we'd put on a different 4 horses and go again. We'd probably change at least twice or 3 times a day. It's me and my dad and my mother's picking up the bundles and setting them up, I suppose.
Did your mom work out in the field often?
Oh yes, yeah. Way back, way back when we used the header, she'd she'd set the stacks all the time. You know, yeah, she was a farmhand, all right. That was all the boys in school that year. Starting from the left side was Lawrence Handel, and then me, then Melvin Handel, then Kermit Shower, then Floyd over on the left again, and Irvin, and Floyd Shower and Irvin Handel, and the little one sitting is Leroy Handel. That was a one-room schoolhouse. She taught all eighth grades, and well, I suppose sometimes there wasn't eighth grades. I don't know, but pretty close a bit.
How many kids were generally in your school?
Oh, suppose, I imagine between 15 and 20. Like those were older, then they had more kids in this. But like this here, that's when the school was getting pretty small already. There may be 12 kids about when that picture was taken. Yeah, that was a picture taken in the park in Jamestown. They took us all the way to Jamestown for a picnic. I don't think I know 'em.
That's okay.
I don't know everybody on there. My dad way over here, and Bill Handel, I guess.
And they took your school to Jamestown for the picnic?
Yeah, all the kids did take them all. That was quite a trip, considering.
What did the kids ride on to get to Jamestown?
All them old cars, just everybody had to bring some in the car. Yeah.
Was there a particular reason that you went on this picnic?
I suppose, I imagine that was when school went out and they'd go on a picnic. But why the reason to go all the way to Jamestown, I don't know.
Were most of the students in your class really German?
In that particular school, yeah. Yeah. Well, they were probably gone then already, but there was one, but they were German too, Mandler. No. No, I think they were all, no. We had one family out, Bergerson, they were German.
Were you allowed to speak English in your school, or German in your school?
I guess so. I think when the older kids first went to school, they couldn't speak English at all. But then when the teachers started staying at our house, well, then everybody spoke English then, and the younger ones had it easy. Yeah.
What about at your home? Did your parents and your family speak mainly German or English?
Well, we all could speak German. But as time went on, it got less and less, Now you hardly know how anymore. Yeah, that's different. Well, that's maybe about in the same year too. That picture, this picture's in Jamestown. See that old car? I don't know what that was, a Chevy or whatever.
What was your favorite subject in school?
I don't know. I had one. Well, I should say like recess maybe.
What was your least favorite?
Reading, probably. I never did like to read, and I still don't. Paperwork.
What type of student were you?
Well, the teacher always said I could do better.
You mentioned that you liked recess. What types of things did you do during recess?
Well, when it was nice, we'd play what they call softball or kitten ball at that time. Call it kitten ball, but yeah, we'd play. We never did play baseball, but mostly softball. wintertime, we'd play in the snow. Do you ever hear a game of like Fox and a Goose? No? They'd make a circle, and then you'd have a cross, and then you'd have to go from one cross to the other. If you catch him, then he had to be the guy to go out and catch somebody again. Yeah. What else was there? Pump, pump, pull away. We'd play that. It would be have a line, and you'd have to make it across the line, or else they'd catch you, and then you had to try to catch these guys. But I don't know what else. That's, oh, sled ride. We did a lot of. We had a pretty good sized hill just not far from the school, and we did a lot of that. Well, starting from the left was my sister Ruth and the teacher Bernice Getty and my brother Harold and me.
How many different teachers did you have throughout your school years?
Really? Well, one for every grade, but that one year we had maybe 3 or 4 of them. I don't know what the deal was there, but they'd quit and then they'd have to get another one. Towards the end, the last couple of years, probably they just lived at school then, and then it kind of like a hot lunch or whatever what you say program came along there.
Were they mainly male or female teachers?
Mostly female. No. Some local guys came out. Well, I suppose they graduated from high school, and I know they were teachers then. But well, there's a few other ones too yet, yeah. But mostly were young ladies.
What was it like having the teacher board with you for those years when they boarded?
Well, one thing about them, they never came home and squealed on you. I don't think. No, it was. I think it was very helpful for us, because they'd usually be willing to help you if you had a problem, if you took some work home or it's something. No, it worked out pretty good. But yeah, we walked to school mostly all the time. Uphill both ways.
How far was it?
Well, it depends on if we'd go cross country, it was probably a mile, a little over a mile. If we'd go around the road, well, then it'd be a mile and a half almost. We'd almost cut a half off. How
would you get there in the winter?
Walk.
Even when it snowed?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ruth and I we were the only ones going to school that Harold had graduated then already, but we went to school every day. Never missed a day.
What was attendance like for the other students? Did they miss very many days?
Well, some were sick, they'd have to stay home and stuff like that. But as a rule, I think it was pretty good attendance.
What are the pails that everyone's holding in there almost?
Well, lunch. Yeah. there should be, someone should have a water bucket yet, because there was no water there. You got to take your own water too. I don't know.
What types of food would you eat for lunch there?
Sandwich. Some ham sandwich, or of course, you know, head cheese.
Mm-mm.
No, we'd have that. My dad used to make that, and liver sausage and sausage. We had some pretty good sandwiches. Some of them only came with maybe chocolate on the bread.
Is there anything else you'd like to say about school?
Well, all I can say is I made it through the 8th grade anyway. Yeah, I could have been dressed a little better though, but that's the way it was. Kind of hand me downs. By the time I got them, then the buttons were gone. That's my confirmation picture. But I don't know two of the last girls that were here on the right side. I don't know their names anymore. You want their names?
Sure.
Yeah.
You can remember.
Maggie Weil, Lawrence Dockter, and Emma Ackerman, and Adam Meitinger. He got to be a minister. Leona Kubler, and me, Irene Remick, and Gottlieb Feigert. But these other two girls, I don't remember their names. I don't know how that could have happened, but that's the way it is.
Where did you take your confirmation classes?
Yeah, in Streeter. Yeah, there was that was before this church was built. There was a little schoolhouse on the back there. That's where we'd have our Sunday school and stuff like that.
Did you have to board in Streeter?
Yeah, I did. I don't know about the rest of them, but I did.
Where did you board at?
It, well, it turned out that it was my brother's in-laws that I stayed at, and that was right near the church there anyway, so. You know, Henry Kluntz was their names, but I think, I don't know, I must have went to probably a month, I suppose. But nowadays it's different. They have it once a week for a whole year compared to what we did at that time. That was my first suit, my confirmation suit. That's the first one I ever got.
What types of things did you have to study at confirmation?
Oh, the catechism and Bible verses and things like that.
Did you learn in German or in English?
I did in English, but I think Ruth and Harold were the first ones in English. The rest of them were German. Confirmed in German, yeah. I'm pretty sure that I wasn't the first one.
How important was religion to your family?
It must have been very important because they made sure everybody went.
How often would you go to church?
Well, most like when the roads were good, you'd go to church on Sunday, but or every other church holiday there was. But in the winter time, it sometimes got far and few between with no roads, and I think they did go sometimes with the horses to church.
And where'd your family go to church?
In Streeter. Well, at one time there was a little church, well, maybe about, I'd say 3 miles away from the yard there. I think they went there sometimes, but mostly in Two Streeters.
Do you remember what the seating arrangements were like at church?
Oh yeah, the men on one side, ladies on the other, and the kids sat up in the benches with no back on. No wonder you moved around. Yeah, I think the men sat on the right side and the ladies on the left side. It finally changed. Yeah.
Is there anything else about church or religion you'd like to add?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, I forgot to ask you. Were you able to question the religious teachings?
In church, you mean?
Yeah, when you were younger, when you were growing up, were you
Well-
able to question any of the religious
Well, I'm sure you could, but like when I was smaller, they just had little verses on cards, mostly to learn and stuff like that. Memorize. We did a lot of memorizing when I was smaller. But I don't know back then. I don't know if anybody questioned the minister. You know, it was. That's the way it was, I guess. That was me. I think that was in Japan. Right after Chow. Unless it was. So I think it was in Japan. We were. I was. I was stationed in Hokkaido, Japan, for 7 months before we went to Korea.
Were you drafted or were you enlisted?
Uh, I got drafted. You know,
What year did you get drafted in?
1950. In October 1950. I got out in 52, September. It kind of had us over the barrel. When I turned 18, my brother and I got called at the same time. And then they were only going to take one. So my dad said I was too young, and then Harold went. So then when I was about 23, then the Korean thing started, and then I got drafted. So they had four of us that got in the Army. Well, 2 of them were in the Air Force. Harold was in the Marines, and I was in the Army. Well, on the left side is me, and then there's a guy by the name of Wilbur Ding, and Alman Eide, and D. Klotz, but I can't remember his first name anymore. That must have been taken down to Camp Oak, Louisiana, I think. That's where that was. That's where we got our basic training. She said everybody that gets basic training there goes to Germany. But we changed that. Well, I probably never went through, seen the Panama Canal. We left in New Orleans and we went through the Panama Canal when we went to Japan. So at least that's one thing I've seen that I wouldn't have.
Were the majority of the people in your company, were they from the North Dakota area, or were they from all over the United States?
Well, I got drafted into the Oklahoma National Guard. And, well, we, North and South Dakota. There was some from Montana. And a few from Minnesota, and a few from New York. But basically, well, then they had all the guys from Oklahoma, of course. Yeah. I don't know some of them guys anymore, names anymore. Yeah. Let's leave it out to Cap and Elbon Idy, D. Klotz, and Ding, but I don't know. I don't remember the rest of the names anymore. Should have wrote them down, right? Whoever think you'd forget them.
Did a lot of your friends get drafted?
Your local friends, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, quite a few of them, yeah. Yeah,
Did some of your brothers who were drafted for World War II, did they have to stay in the services?
no, they got out when World War II ended. Well, for a while there, we didn't know where my brother Arthur was. He was in Burma and India over in there. So, yeah. This picture was taken in South Dakota. My brother was in CC camp there in Camp Cook, South Dakota. Then we went down to see him. And my dad's sister was living down there in Lead, South Dakota. And then that's why the whole bunch of us went down there. That was a car full, huh? Except my brother wasn't in the car. Yeah.
How long did it take you to get down there?
Almost forever. Yeah. Yeah. I never was so far away from home in my life until then. And seeing them big rocks sticking up all over. Quite impressive. Yeah.
Where did you eat on your way down there?
Oh, I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure Mom packed a lunch. I'm pretty sure of that. No, I don't see him going in a cafe. Because when we went even to Jamestown, we'd meet and then we'd go to the park. She'd have a lunch, even if she had to buy some stuff first in the store, and then we'd go to the park and eat. No hamburgers. Never had a watermelon and whatnot, but we didn't eat no cafe, that's for sure.